Behind the iron gates of Wolston Prison, deep in the heart of Queensland, lies a world few have seen, but many fear. Since opening its doors in 1965, Wolston has earned a dark reputation, not just as a prison, but as a living nightmare. Overcrowded, violent, and riddled with corruption, it became Australia's most feared penitentiary. Inside these walls, the strongest prey on the weakest, alliances are forged in blood, and every day is a fight to survive. Tonight, we go beyond the headlines and the official reports. We dive into the raw, brutal reality of life inside Wolston Prison. Through the stories of inmates, guards, and experts, we uncover a place where power and fear collide, a place where justice sometimes feels like the last thing on anyone's mind. This is the story of Wolston Prison, a story of violence, betrayal, survival, and the human spirit trapped in the darkest of places. Welcome to Australia's most feared prison. Hidden on the outskirts of Queensland, Wolston Prison stands as one of Australia's most notorious and feared correctional facilities. Since opening its doors in 1965, this grim fortress has housed the country's most dangerous criminals, becoming a place where violence, fear, and survival rule every moment behind its steel bars. Originally designed to hold around 800 inmates, Wolston soon became overcrowded, sometimes holding more than 1,200. This crushing population strain turned the prison into a powder keg of tension and unrest. Overcrowding bred violence. Desperation grew, and with it, the brutal reality of prison life. Inside Wolston, the yard was divided among ruthless gangs, biker clubs, hardened criminals, and lifelong offenders, each controlling their own territory with an iron grip. Trust was scarce, and alliances shifted quickly. For the men inside, every day was a fight for survival, and any mistake could cost you everything. The guards were caught in a dangerous balance as well. Outnumbered and overwhelmed, some tried their best to maintain order, while others became part of the problem, colluding with inmates or turning a blind eye to brutality and smuggling. Corruption spread like wildfire, feeding the cycle of violence and lawlessness. Behind the cold walls, illegal weapons, drugs, and contraband flowed through secret channels. The prison became a battleground where control was constantly challenged, and power was won and lost in bloody confrontations. Wolston Prison remains a dark chapter in Australia's justice system, a place where harsh realities force us to confront difficult questions about punishment, control, and humanity. Tonight, we open the gates and step inside to reveal the brutal truth of life within Australia's most feared prison. Wolston Prison was built with a purpose, to be a modern, secure, and humane place to hold Australia's most dangerous criminals. The government envisioned a prison where rehabilitation could take place alongside strict security. But the reality quickly spiraled out of control. Designed for 800 inmates, Wolston became severely overcrowded as more violent offenders were sent inside. With numbers rising well beyond capacity, conditions worsened. Cells meant for 1 or 2 men became cramped with 3 or 4. The overcrowding created a pressure cooker of tension and violence, igniting conflicts among prisoners. Staff shortages meant guards were stretched thin, making control difficult. Many officers struggled to maintain order in an environment that seemed to grow more hostile by the day. The prison's modern infrastructure did little to stop the surge of unrest. The human factor was overwhelmed. What was meant to be a place of correction became a battlefield. The prison walls were no longer a barrier to crime, but a cage where old rivalries and new tensions clashed daily. Wolston began to develop a reputation, not as a place of reform, but as a hellhole feared by prisoners and guards alike. The public rarely heard of these problems. Prison authorities kept a tight lid on incidents to avoid negative publicity. But beneath the surface, violence and despair were rampant. Wolston was becoming a powder keg, waiting for a spark that would ignite a crisis. Inside Wolston, power was divided and fiercely contested. The prison yard was no neutral ground. Instead, it was carved into territories controlled by violent gangs and factions. These groups ruled with brutal authority, enforcing their own rules and punishing those who crossed them. Among these groups were the notorious biker gangs, their colors marking their dominance. Alongside them were career criminals who had spent decades behind bars, hardened by years of violence and survival. These men created a social hierarchy within the prison, where power and respect were won by strength and fear. Prisoners quickly learned to align themselves with a faction or risk becoming targets. Friendships were fragile. Trust was rare. Violence was an everyday reality, erupting over the smallest slights or challenges. The yard was a constant pressure cooker of aggression. The guards faced an impossible task trying to maintain order in this divided world. Walking through the yard was like navigating a minefield. Any misstep could spark a fight. For inmates, loyalty to their gang was a matter of survival. Betrayal meant swift and often brutal retribution. Wolston was no ordinary prison yard. It was a battlefield where alliances could change overnight and danger lurked in every shadow. One inmate rose to infamous prominence inside Wolston, Michael Harrington, known to all as Mad Mick. Sentenced for a string of armed robberies and assaults, Mick's violent reputation preceded him. But inside Wolston, his legend would grow far beyond his crimes outside. Within months of arriving, Mick established control over the prison's north wing. Using sheer force and intimidation, he carved out his own empire. Mick wasn't just a fighter. He was a leader who commanded respect through fear and violence. His gang operated like a ruthless regime, enforcing strict rules on other inmates. Defiance was met with brutal punishment. Mick's reign was marked by savage beatings, control over contraband, and a network of loyal followers willing to do his bidding. The guards knew Mick's power, but were often powerless to stop him. Some feared provoking him, while others turned a blind eye, recognizing his influence as a way to keep order in a chaotic environment. Mad Mick became a symbol of Wolston's brutality, a man whose name sent chills through the prison and whose rule defined a dark era in the institution's history. Mick's rule was absolute. Within the prison walls, his word was law. Other inmates dared not challenge him openly, knowing the consequences could be deadly. His methods were savage, often leaving victims broken and terrified. Mick's control extended beyond mere muscle. He orchestrated smuggling operations, controlling the flow of drugs and weapons inside Wolston. His gang wielded this power like a weapon, further tightening their grip. Yet, his reign was not without cracks. Rival factions chafed under his dominance, plotting in secret. Power struggles simmered beneath the surface, threatening to erupt into violence at any moment. Guards, overwhelmed and understaffed, often struggled to contain the chaos. Some sought to use Mick's power to their advantage, trading favors or turning a blind eye to maintain fragile order. Despite the brutality, Mick's reign brought a perverse form of stability. Prisoners knew the rules, and violence, while frequent, was predictable. It was a dangerous peace, one built on fear, but one that prevented total anarchy. The men and women charged with running Wolston faced nearly impossible odds. Overcrowding, understaffing, and rising violence tested their resolve daily. For many, the job became a mental and physical battle, a constant struggle to maintain control. Some guards tried to enforce rules fairly, but the environment often pushed even the strongest to their limits. Many officers became cynical or hardened by the brutality they witnessed. Burnout and trauma were common. A darker side emerged as some guards grew complicit in the prison's corruption. Bribes, smuggling, and cover-ups flourished behind the scenes. Some officers ignored violence or even helped smuggle contraband, driven by fear, greed, or survival instincts. This collusion fueled the chaos inside Wolston, undermining trust, and making the prison even more dangerous. The line between inmate and guard blurred in a toxic dance of power and corruption. For those who wanted to uphold the law, it was a daily moral battle, trying to hold order in a place slipping further into disorder and darkness. Behind Wolston's walls, a shadow economy thrived. Despite strict controls, drugs, weapons, and other contraband flowed in through hidden channels. Smuggling became an underground industry, fueling violence and addiction. Inmates used cunning and contacts on the outside to get illegal goods inside. Corrupt guards and staff facilitated the flow, exchanging favors and bribes to keep the operation running. The smuggled items were more than just contraband. They were tools of power. Possessing a weapon or drugs could tip the balance in a gang's favor. Control of these supplies often sparked violent clashes. Prisoners who controlled smuggling networks wielded significant influence. They built alliances and intimidated rivals, turning Wolston into a volatile environment where danger lurked in every corner. The smuggling network was a sign of deeper systemic failure, proof that the prison's walls could not keep out the chaos inside. Years of simmering tension finally erupted in 1985. Overcrowding, violence, and corruption had pushed Wolston to a breaking point. What followed was one of the bloodiest prison riots in Australian history. Inmates seized control of the prison yard, smashing windows, setting fires, and taking guards hostage. Chaos reigned as flames lit up the night sky, and screams echoed through the concrete corridors. The government scrambled to respond, sending in riot squads and negotiating with inmate leaders. For hours, order was lost. The riot left Wolston scarred, physically and psychologically. This eruption was not just a spontaneous uprising. It was a symptom of years of neglect and failure, a violent cry for change from men trapped in a desperate and broken system. Inside Wolston during the riot, horrors unfolded. Inmates fought viciously with each other and the guards. Cells were destroyed, and personal vendettas played out with brutal intensity. Hostages were held under threat of violence. The prison's infrastructure was damaged, leaving the facility unsafe and chaotic. The riot exposed the fragile grip the authorities had on Wolston. For the men trapped inside, the nightmare became their reality, a stark reminder of the system's failure to maintain control and humanity. Investigations after the riot uncovered darker truths. It was revealed that the chaos was fueled by secret alliances between some guards and inmate factions. Corrupt officers had aided in smuggling weapons and drugs, deliberately undermining prison security. This betrayal from within shattered trust and worsened the violence. The riot was, in part, orchestrated by those seeking to advance their own power in a lawless environment. These revelations forced a reckoning within the prison system, exposing corruption and demanding reform. When calm was restored, the damage was clear. Wolston's walls bore scars from the riot, shattered glass, scorched concrete, and damaged cells. But the deepest wounds were unseen, the broken men left behind. Inmates and staff alike carried physical and emotional trauma. Trust was shattered, and fear lingered. The prison system faced intense scrutiny. Questions were asked about overcrowding, corruption, and whether rehabilitation was possible in such an environment. Wolston became a symbol of the consequences when a system fails its people, both inside and out. For the inmates, life after the riot remained perilous. Survival meant constant vigilance, shifting alliances, and hard choices. Many became hardened, learning to navigate the violent social hierarchy. Fear was a constant companion, as was the threat of betrayal. Friendships were fragile, and the line between ally and enemy blurred. Yet even in this harsh reality, some found ways to endure, to hold onto a shred of humanity amid the chaos. Despite Wolston's brutality, stories of redemption emerged from within its walls. Some inmates used their time behind bars to reflect and transform. Programs aimed at rehabilitation struggled against the overwhelming odds, but for a few, they provided hope. These men later shared their stories, warning others of the prison's dangers and advocating for change. Their journeys show that even in the darkest places, change is possible. Wolston Prison stands as a harsh lesson about the limits of punishment without reform. It reveals how overcrowding, corruption, and neglect create a breeding ground for violence. More than bricks and bars, prisons are about people. And when humanity is lost, chaos follows. Wolston challenges society to rethink justice, control, and compassion. Today, Wolston continues to operate, a reminder that the struggle inside never fully ends. Efforts to improve conditions persist, but challenges remain. The legacy of violence and fear lingers, haunting the institution's halls. Wolston's story is far from over, a chilling testament to the cost of a broken system and the fight to rebuild it. Wolston Prison remains a chilling reminder of a justice system pushed to its limits, where overcrowding, violence, and corruption fuel a cycle that's hard to break. Behind these walls, lives have been destroyed, and yet, amid the darkness, stories of survival and redemption continue to emerge. The tale of Wolston forces us to ask difficult questions about punishment, rehabilitation, and the true cost of locking away humanity. It is a call to look deeper, to challenge the system, and to seek change. Thank you for joining us on this journey inside Wolston Prison. If this story moved you or made you think, please like, share, and subscribe for more hard-hitting true crime documentaries. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned for more info on crime and prison scenes.